The Zorath Collective had seen many planets, many species, and many wars. But never had they met a race so small and fragile-looking as humans. From their distant stars, they studied Earth and believed it would fall without resistance. The aliens were sure humans would panic, surrender, or flee the moment their ships entered orbit. They called Earth the blue dust, beautiful but weak. So they sent a message: surrender and survive, or resist and be erased. In orbit around the moon, Captain Ethan Burke stood in silence aboard the human defense station. His hands were firm, eyes locked on the screen, showing massive alien ships entering Earth's system. Their shapes were strange, like long black spires with glowing green light sand. They moved as if they owned the space they flew through. Most of Earth's people didn't know yet. The government hadn't even sent the full alert. But Ethan knew this wasn't a visit. This was an invasion. Ethan didn't wait. He tapped the screen and gave a single command: fire railgun 1. The operator beside him blinked, shocked. Sir, we haven't been attacked yet, I said. Fire. Ethan repeated, calm but sharp. The railgun launched a massive spike of metal from the moon base, and in just seconds, it pierced one of the alien ships like a knife through soft fruit. A moment later, the Zorath ship exploded in silent. Space didn't carry sound, but the bright flash was more than enough. The aliens did not expect that. Across the Zorath command bridge, alarms screamed. The alien leader, a tall being with armored skin and 6 narrow eyes, stared in disbelief. This had never happened. Most species waited. Most species begged. These humans had struck first. No warning, no hesitation, just fire. Back on Earth, General Marcus Lee received the alert. The alien fleet had arrived, and humanity had answered. He didn't smile. He simply whispered, "So it begins." In the skies above Earth, human satellites turned toward the incoming threat. Some were military. Some were repurposed weather tech, but all were armed. Covert weapons, once hidden to avoid fear or panic, now glowed to life. Around the planet, secret weapons bases powered up. Old Cold War bunkers opened again. Humanity had feared this day for years. Now it was real. The Zorath fleet moved closer, trying to communicate, but humans didn't answer. Earth's space ports shut down. Civilian flights were grounded. In the shadows, the human fleet prepared. Captain Burke looked at his crew. They were young. Some had never seen battle, but their eyes didn't show fear. They showed something harder, something clearer. "They think we'll run," Burke said softly. "Let's disappoint them." The Zorath sent another message, this time louder, clearer, and with a tone of insult. "Humans, this is your final warning. Leave your weapons. Open your cities. You have no chance." Burke raised an eyebrow, then gave the order for the base to broadcast Earth's answer. A silent video of the destroyed Zorath ship spinning in space. Its glowing green remains flickering in the black. No words, just proof. Within minutes, the alien fleet fired. They destroyed a few satellites, thinking that would scare the humans. But Earth's skies stayed lit with defense shields and countermeasures. Lasers from ground-based cannons answered their blasts. The war had started, but something was wrong for the aliens. Every time they tried to strike, the humans pushed back. Every missile was tracked. Every fighter was met. Ships appeared from behind Earth's moon, from inside asteroid fields, and even from underwater launch bays on Earth. For every alien move, the humans had already prepared. Ethan sat in his chair, calm and sharp. "Send out the next wave. Let's show them how Earth dances." Suddenly, small human fighters darted into the middle of the alien formation. These weren't bulky or slow like Zorath ships. They were fast, unpredictable, pilot-controlled, human minds against alien algorithms. The aliens didn't know how to react. Commander Natalie Cruz, leading the second wave from her ship, Ironclaw, spoke through the comms. All units, remember what they called us primitive, soft, small. Make them eat those words. She and her team unleashed a perfect strike. 3 Zorath ships burned in under 2 minutes. The aliens tried to retreat. Humans followed. Down on Earth, the news finally reached the public. People watched the skies in fear, but then they saw the explosions above, the fire in the stars, and the human ships dancing among giants. Their fear changed to awe, and then to pride. Children stared at the screen as human pilots shouted victory calls. Old veterans wiped tears. Families held hands and whispered prayers, not of fear, but of strength. Ethan Burke looked out the window of his station. He could see the broken remains of the alien ship still drifting. They expected us to run, he said, but this is Earth, and we don't run, and above the planet, the war had only just begun, but the first shot. The first stand and the first lesson had already been written in fire. Humans were not prey. They were the storm, and the Zorath had just walked into it, unprepared and unaware of what came next. The Zorath command ship, wide as a small city and covered in dark metal plates, hovered at the edge of Earth's system. Their leader, High Strategist Kurtel, sat on a throne of steel and bone. Staring at the blinking lights on his display, 1 ship lost, several damaged. And no surrender from the humans. This was not how it was supposed to go, he hissed. Send more ships forward. Burn them, make them kneel. But he didn't know something very important. Earth had secrets, and some of those secrets were moving through space right now. Near Saturn, in the silent shadows of the rings, a fleet of black warships waited like hungry wolves in the dark. These were the stealth-class ships of the Earth's defense command ships, so advanced. Even Earth's allies barely knew they existed. No lights, no sound, just the hum of power in their cores, aboard the Vanguard. Commander Natalie Cruz stood in her command room. Her ship was long, sharp-edged, and armed with the newest weapons Earth had ever built. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were focused like lasers. They think we're hiding, she said too. Her crew, they think Earth only has what they can see. Time to show them the dark has teeth. One by one, the stealth ships uncloaked. Revealing their sleek shapes, their engines roared to life, pushing them out of Saturn's orbit and toward the battlefield near Earth. The aliens didn't notice until it was too late, high above Earth. Captain Ethan Burke's station picked up the signal. Cruz is in position, one of his crews said. Eyes wide, Ethan nodded slowly. Let her bite, suddenly. The space between Earth and the alien fleet lit up. From nowhere, dozens of human warships appeared. Silent and deadly. The Vanguard, Shadowlance, Falcon's Edge. And more, all moving with precision. They opened fire at once, unleashing particle beams, railgun blasts, and missile swarms that split through the enemy like knives. The aliens spun in confusion. Their systems weren't ready for ships that had no energy signatures. No heat, no signal. They had prepared for a visible fight, not a phantom attack, inside the Vanguard. Commander Cruz leaned forward. Target their communications. She ordered, cut their eyes, break their mouth. Missiles shot through space and exploded against the enemy's command relays. One by one, the Zorath ships lost contact with each other. They began to float without direction, shooting in panic. Meanwhile, smaller Earth ships zipped between the giant alien cruisers, planting small mines, flying through engine vents, and blasting weak spots with laser drills. Human pilots weren't just trained, they were creative, wild, unpredictable. Pull back, pull back. One alien shouted inside the bridge of a cruiser. But the message never reached anyone. The communications were gone. Commander Cruz smiled grimly. It's working. They're blind, they're deaf, and soon they'll be gone, from Mars. General Marcus Lee watched everything unfold. He stood in his underground control room beneath the red soil, surrounded by blinking screens and hundreds of operators. Earth's shadow fleet is real, he whispered to himself, and they're better than anyone imagined. He ordered the next wave to launch. Drones from the Martian vaults, programmed to follow the human fleet and finish off damaged ships. Thousands of silver insect-like drones flew from Mars, moving in swarms. They didn't need pilots, they just needed a target in Earth's orbit. Captain Burke's voice came through the comms. To all human forces, do not let them recover. Keep the pressure, keep the fear. The alien fleet was falling apart. Ships exploded in bright silence, spinning into darkness. Others turned to retreat, but human ships chased them, not allowing escape. Inside the Zorath command ship, Kurtel slammed his fists against his console. How do they fight like this? Their ships are weak, their bodies soft. How can they turn the battle? He roared. One of his officers trembled. We underestimated them. High strategist. They were never weak. They were only waiting. Kurtel's eyes glowed with rage. Then they will regret waiting. Prepare the heavy weapons. Call for the second wave. We will crush their spirit. But as he said it, one last explosion shook the ship. One of their core battleships, Zoravak, had been destroyed completely by 3 human fighters working together like a pack of wolves. Commander Cruz's voice crackled through to Captain Burke. First wave down, they're scattering. What's next? Ethan smiled slightly. Next. He said, now we show them Earth has claws too. And so, in the blackness of space, the second wave of humanity's wrath surged forward, not with fear, not with panic, but with fury. Strategy, and something far stronger than the aliens had ever understood. The will to survive. And in that moment, the galaxy learned a lesson it would never forget. Humans didn't run from war. They became the war. The Zorath were bleeding now. Their fleet was scattered, their pride wounded. But they were not finished. Not yet. Their second wave was already approaching, larger, stronger, and more brutal. The new alien reinforcements aimed straight for Mars, believing they could split the human defense line in 2. If they could take Mars, they thought, Earth would be isolated, and then they could burn it. But Mars was no longer a weak colony with dusty outposts and empty domes. It had changed quietly. Secretly, but completely, under the surface of its red soil, it had become a fortress. Deep inside the planet, far beneath the sands, was Command Vault 9. There, General Marcus Lee stood tall in front of a huge display screen showing the alien fleet closing in fast. His face showed no panic, only focus around him. Hundreds of operators worked in silence, tapping controls, checking systems, and loading codes into the Martian defense grid. He pressed a button on the table, and his voice echoed through all of Mars' military channels. Activate the storm. Fire when ready. Above Mars, massive magnetic storm cannons, hidden in the cliffs and craters, rose slowly from the ground. These weapons had never been used in open combat. Not even Earth knew the full details, but they had been tested, perfected, and now unleashed. A hum filled the atmosphere, and then a loud flash of electric blue ripped through space. A single energy pulse from Mars shot out and slammed into the lead Zorath ship. The alien craft didn't just explode, it disintegrated. Its black armor peeled away like paper. Its core melted into fire. Then another pulse fired, and another. The red planet had become a dragon, and it was breathing lightning. From orbit, human fighters emerged from Mars canyons, their red hulls blending into the planet's color. They darted through the incoming alien wave like hornets, dropping mines, locking onto engines, and firing precision shots that hit where it hurt most. Lieutenant Owen Carter, piloting the Crimson, Ray looped under an enemy cruiser and shouted through the comms. "That's number 2 down. Keep pressing, Mars doesn't fall." His co-pilot, Ava Morgan, grinned and replied, "No one ever expects Mars to bite back." Meanwhile, in orbit, alien commanders panicked. Their ships were built for strength, but not against invisible ground-based weapons, the magnetic salvos. From Mars were unpredictable. They bent around shields and tore into engines. Several Zorith captains tried to pull back, but retreat was chaos. The sky above Mars became a graveyard of burning wreckage and broken ships. Back underground, General Lee received reports. "Sir, 30% of enemy fleet disabled. Another wave trying to flank from the dark side of the planet." He didn't blink. Let them. That's where the Black Wall is waiting. The Black Wall was a string of hidden drone launchers buried along the Martian equator. Each launcher could fire hundreds of high-speed interceptor drones in seconds. And now, they did. Dozens of alien ships flew toward the night side of Mars only, to be met by a swarm of drones that sliced into them like a steel storm. The aliens had walked into another trap, inside one of the Zorith ships. A junior officer screamed, "We are surrounded." This is not a colony, it's a war machine. On Earth, Captain Ethan Burke monitored everything from the lunar station. His crew stared at the screen in awe as the Martian cannons tore through the alien armada. "They went for Mars," Ethan said softly, and Mars said no, Commander. Natalie Cruz joined the call from her ship. "They thought we'd divide. Thought Mars was the weak link. Now they know better." Burke nodded. "Now we push, with the alien fleet in ruins above Mars." The human counterattack began. Warships from Earth, Luna, and the Belt surged forward, striking hard at the scattered Zorath survivors. Human strategy wasn't based on numbers, it was based on unpredictability. And now that the aliens were confused, humanity's true strength showed. Aboard the human warship Redstone, Captain Leela Dawson guided her vessel through the chaos. "Aim for their rear engines. Disable movement, then finish them," her crew obeyed, and one more alien ship burst into flames. Spinning slowly as its core collapsed around her, other captains did the same, working together, sharing targets, coordinating like a single fist, striking over and over. By the time the smoke cleared, half the second alien wave had been destroyed. The rest were in full retreat, but Earth didn't give chase, not yet. Not until the next trap was ready on Mars. As the silence returned to the red sky, General Marcus Lee stood at the window of the upper command dome. He looked out over the barren landscape and whispered, "They thought we were still settlers, still digging in dirt. But now they know Mars stands with Earth, and we don't break, far away." In the cold black of deep space, the Zorith High Command watched the loss in disbelief. Mars had not just survived, it had turned the tide of war, and the humans, small and strange, had fought like titans. The aliens wanted fear, surrender, weakness. But what they found on Mars was something else entirely. They found resistance, they found fire, they found the heart of humanity. And the war, once easy and certain, had just turned deadly. Europa was just a moon, small, icy, and far from Earth's light. Most people thought it was just a rock floating in space, but beneath its frozen shell, Europa hid something more valuable than gold, fuel, and lots of it. Deep oceans under the ice held rare compounds that powered human ships across the system. Without Europa, human fleets would run dry. The Zorith knew this, so when they failed to take Mars, they changed their target. They would cut the humans where it hurt the most: supply lines. They sent a strike force of elite raiders straight for Europa, fast and quiet. Their plan was simple: destroy the stations, destroy the storage units, and vanish into the dark before Earth even noticed. But Earth had noticed, and it had sent someone to wait for them. Lieutenant Paige Monroe stood at the front of her warship. The vigilant, staring into the cold blackness beyond Europa's orbit. She wasn't a famous hero or a decorated general. She was a survivor, a fighter, and a woman who had lost too many friends to alien fire. This time, she wouldn't let them die without a fight. Her ship was smaller than the Zorath cruisers, but faster. It had teeth-twin plasma cannons, short-range missile pods, and rotating defense turrets. But most of all, it had a crew that trusted her completely. "We stay low," Monroe said calmly. "We stay silent until they come in close. Then we bite. We bite hard." Her second-in-command, Ensign Leo Grant, nodded. "Sensors show 3 ships approaching fast. Coming from the far side of the moon. Looks like they don't know we're here." Monroe narrowed her eyes. "Good. Let's ruin their day." The Vigilant floated just above Europa's surface. Half hidden behind jagged ice cliffs, the ship's engines were cold, using only minimal power to avoid detection. Snowflakes danced silently across its hull as the icy wind of the moon blew beneath them. The Zorath ships came in like vultures, black and sharp, scanning the human supply stations below. They opened fire on the dome's blasts of green light, slicing into metal and glass. Explosions tore through the thin atmosphere, but the humans had evacuated days ago. Only empty shells remained and traps. One of the alien ships flew too close to a dome, marked as a fuel tank. A second later, it exploded in a wave of blue fire. The tank had been filled with unstable chemicals, and the blast shredded half the alien ship into space dust. Monroe watched it happen from her control room. "There goes one, 2 more to go." She gave the signal, and the Vigilant powered up. Engines roared to life, and the ship shot forward like a blade from the dark. Plasma beams cut across the second alien ship, targeting its weak underbelly. The aliens fired back, but Monroe's crew was ready. They weaved through debris and ice, firing with perfect timing. "Missile lock," Ensign Grant shouted, firing. 2 missiles streaked out and slammed into the Zorath's starboard wing. The alien ship spun, smoking, trying to gain control, but it was too late. The Vigilant flew underneath it, flipped upside down, and delivered the killing shot point-blank plasma blast to the core. The second ship exploded, sending chunks of metal crashing into Europa's ice. Some pieces melted holes through the crust, revealing glowing blue oceans beneath. The last alien ship tried to retreat, but Monroe wasn't going to let that happen. "No survivors," she said coldly. "Not after what they did on Ganymede." She remembered that battle too well, when the aliens attacked a science station and killed over 200 civilians, including children. She had been too late then, but not this time. The Vigilant chased the final ship across Europa's orbit. Trading fire, shields sizzled, lights flickered, and systems strained. The alien ship was bigger, heavier, but it wasn't smarter. Monroe saw the path ahead and grinned. "Ready the gravity hooks." "What?" Ensign Grant asked, confused. "Just trust me," she said. They flew straight toward Europa's largest ice canyon. The alien ship followed, firing wildly. Monroe waited until the last second, then turned sharply, diving into the canyon and hooking the ice walls with gravity anchors. The Vigilant swung around like a comet, came up behind the enemy ship, fired all weapons. The alien cruiser took every hit, cracked down the middle, and fell into the canyon, crashing into the icy ground with a soundless boom. The canyon filled with black smoke and falling snow. Monroe exhaled, her hands steady. "That's 3 down." But the celebration didn't last long. Alarms rang, systems flashed red. Damage everywhere. Half her crew were injured. One was gone lost during the chase. She walked to the medical bay, looking at the wounded. Her voice didn't shake, but her eyes burned. "We won," she said softly, "but it cost us." Later, she stood on Europa's surface. Near the wreckage, staring at the stars. "They thought we wouldn't defend the edge," she whispered. "They thought Europa was just ice." She looked up at the earth in the distance. "We may be far," she said, but were never alone. And as she walked back toward the ship, she made a silent promise to the stars, to her fallen crew, and to all of Earth she would fight again, and the next time, they wouldn't lose anyone. Not if she could help it. The battle for Europa was over, but the galaxy was far from quiet. Across the stars, whispers began to spread. Not among humans, but among the alien species who had once mocked them. Rumors, ghost stories. And fear traveled faster than any ship. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning. And then, something impossible happened out near Neptune. In the coldest edge of the solar system, a strange signal appeared. It was old, rusty, and barely holding together, but it carried a human code one that had been thought lost decades ago. A code belonging to ships destroyed in the first expansion war. Captain Ethan Burke stood inside the Lunar Command bunker, staring at the signal on the screen. His voice dropped to a whisper. "That's not possible." Beside him, Commander Natalie Cruz looked equally stunned. "Is that the Phantom Fleet?" 27 years ago, a group of experimental warships had vanished during a mission beyond Pluto. Everyone believed they were gone, destroyed by a solar storm or by an enemy never named. Their names were carved into Earth's walls of honor, their captains declared dead. But now those ships were back. In the silence beyond Neptune, black warships began to appear one by one. They rose from behind frozen moons, from abandoned mining stations, from old asteroid fields where they had hidden all these years. Their hulls were scarred, their paint faded, but their weapons gleamed like new. At the front was the Valkyrie, a massive dreadnought with a jagged front and blue glowing engines. At its helm stood a man long believed dead, Captain Logan Pierce. His hair was now silver, his beard wild, but his eyes were sharp, colder than space, and filled with fire. He looked into the camera, recording a message to Earth. "We were never gone," he said. "We were building, hiding, waiting. Now we're ready." The Phantom Fleet had not died. It had gone into the shadows, learning enemy tech, stealing alien weapons, creating something Earth had never seen before: warp jump cannons, armor made from shattered black holes and plasma, torpedoes that could melt through anything. Their first target was already chosen. An elite Zoroth squadron had gathered near Neptune, sent to trap and destroy any human ships fleeing the inner system. They had no idea death was coming for them. The Phantom Fleet jumped without warning. 1 second, space was still. The next human warships appeared like ghosts, firing instantly. The alien ships didn't even have time to raise shields. The Valkyrie fired its warp cannon. The beam twisted through space itself and sliced an enemy ship into two, not with heat, but with reality bending around it. Other ships, like the Stormblade, Nova Fist, and Drift Falcon, fired next. Each blast was precise, each move perfectly coordinated. Alien ships exploded one by one, their commanders screaming in confusion. "They weren't on our scans. How are they here? What weapons are those?" Captain Pierce stood calmly on his bridge. "They don't understand," he said to his crew. "We stopped playing catch-up years ago now. We lead." One Zorath captain tried to ram the Nova Fist, but it vanished, teleporting instantly. Behind him and firing a pulse straight into his engines, the alien ship cracked open like a fruit, burning as it fell into the gas storms of Neptune. Earth Command watched it all live. The Phantom Fleet hadn't just returned, they were rewriting the rules of war. Commander Cruz whispered. "They've been gone for decades, and they came back stronger than anything we've got." Captain Burke nodded slowly. "They didn't come back to join us. They came back to end this." On board the Valkyrie, Logan Pierce walked past his officers, some human, some part machine. Now, some had lost limbs and replaced them with tech beyond Earth's understanding. They were no longer just soldiers. They were ghosts, made of vengeance and brilliance, forged in exile, trained in silence. As the last Zorath ship exploded in the distance, Pierce sent a final message across the system. It played on every military channel, and soon, even across the black market frequencies used by aliens, to all enemies of Earth. He said, his voice steady, "We were the fleet you thought was lost, but we were watching, and now that we've returned, we bring fire, we bring punishment. We bring the end of your arrogance." The message ended with the Phantom Fleet turning in formation, heading inward, toward Jupiter, toward Mars, toward Earth. But not to defend, to strike first. Every remaining Zorath commander who saw the footage felt a shiver. Humans were supposed to be slow, clumsy, weak. But now they had a fleet that defied logic, bent space, and refused to die. The war had changed again, and now every species in the galaxy had one name on their lips: not Earth, not Terrans, not humans. They whispered, the Ghost Fleet, and they prayed it never came for them next. Earth was still standing, but barely. Cities had cracks. Skies were watched with fear. And silence hung over streets once filled with music, but deep inside that silence, something powerful was growing. Unity before the war. Earth was divided, countries with their own rules, leaders arguing, borders drawn with pride and pain. But after the attacks, after the Zorath tried to erase humanity from the stars, all that noise disappeared. There was no longer east or west, rich or poor. There was only survival in a steel bunker beneath Chicago. World leaders now sat around a single table. Generals, scientists, presidents, farmers, even students, all called to speak. No fancy titles, just names. They wore the same gray uniforms, marked only with Earth's symbol, a shattered planet wrapped in chains of fire. One old farmer from Nebraska stood up and said, "My sons can fix machines, my daughters can drive. Anything, tell me what you need, we're not running." A teenager from Brazil raised his hand and said, "I know code, I can help with targeting systems." A retired pilot, age 72, walked to the front and said, "I can still fly. Just give me a ship and someone to protect." General Marcus Lee listened and nodded. He said only 3 words, but they echoed across the room like thunder. "We fight together, the factories." Roared back to life. Old ones were repaired, new ones were built underground and in the mountains. Families worked day and night. Not for money, but for survival. Children helped carry supplies. Elders taught young recruits. No one sat still. In the Nevada desert, a hidden facility was uncovered, an old testing site from a past war. Inside were unfinished war drones, old walker suits, and fusion weapon prototypes. Engineers rushed to update them, weld them, test them within a week. Hundreds of walking warframes marched across the sand, ready for deployment under Antarctica, inside a frozen lab called Silanine. Scientists cracked alien tech retrieved from destroyed Zorath ships. Plasma core stabilizers were turned into new power systems. One scientist, Dr. Hannah Blake, unlocked something even stranger, cloaking field that didn't just hide ships. It bent heat and gravity itself. She looked at her exhausted team and whispered, "We're not just surviving, we're evolving on the front lines." Commander Natalie Cruz met with Captain Ethan Burke in orbit. The Vanguard and the Ironclaw floated side by side as docking bridges connected. They had both seen too much, lost too much, but their eyes were still sharp. Ethan nodded at the screen showing Earth's shipyard production. They're building like never before. "Look at this." Natalie crossed her arms and replied, "You think metal and engines win wars? It's people, Ethan, the ones who stay even when they're afraid. That's the real weapon." He smiled. "Good, because we're going to need both at the same time." The Phantom Fleet had returned to the inner system, not just as warriors. But as guides, Captain Logan Pierce met Earth's leaders in a quiet transmission. His face was pale from years in the void, but his voice carried steel. "You have fire," he said, "but fire needs focus. We've trained in silence. Let us teach what we learned in darkness." And so, human soldiers trained side by side with the Ghost Fleet. Old strategies were thrown out, new ones built with speed, chaos, and adaptability. They called it Strike-Skin Warfare Light, fast, unpredictable. Fleet Command approved the boldest plan yet. A direct attack on the Zorth's Central Command. Vessel Kravex, a floating city-sized monster protected by layers of guards, but too dangerous to leave untouched. If it fell, the enemy's control over the war would crumble. Commander Cruz and Captain Burke were chosen to lead the mission. Along with Logan, Pierce, and his Phantom Squad, they gathered in a dark war room aboard the Vanguard. Lit only by holograms of the enemy ship, Burke looked around the room and said, "We've lost ships, homes, friends, but if we take this target, we cut their throat." Natalie pointed to the weak point near the ship's energy coils. "Right here, we get in. Plant charges, get out." Logan added, "Or we don't get out at all, but we end it." The room went quiet, and then everyone nodded. 3 days later, the mission launched. Hundreds of fighters flew ahead, creating noise, drawing the enemy's attention. Meanwhile, stealth ships drifted under the shadows, carrying strike teams in silence. Commander Cruz's squad pierced the outer shields, using the new cloaking fields from Dr. Blake. The Vanguard dodged a volley of plasma fire and opened a path for boarding. Captain Burke led the charge into the Kravex, fighting through steel corridors filled with smoke and alarms. Alien guards screamed in their tongue, but humans moved like water fast, quiet, deadly. They reached the power core. Natalie looked at the blinking bomb timer and whispered, "Let's shake the stars." As the charges were set, alien reinforcements rushed in. Logan Pierce turned to face them and raised his weapon. "Go," he said to the others. "This is as far as I go." Burke grabbed his arm. "You're not alone, old ghost." Together, they held the final hallway, covering the retreat, blasters glowing red-hot until the final second, and then the Kravex exploded in the distance, lighting up the system like a dying star. Earth's forces watched in silence until one pilot whispered, "We did it." Unity had become power, and power had become hope. The destruction of the Kravex shocked the galaxy. Alien warlords fell silent. Enemy fleets hesitated, and the Zorth High Command screamed in rage behind closed walls. The humans had done what no one thought possible. They had broken the back of the invasion, but Earth knew better. The war was not over. The Zorth still had numbers, and now they were desperate. They gathered their largest remaining armada, thousands of ships with one mission: crush the humans in one final strike. Their target, Titan, Saturn's largest moon. They believed Earth's fleet would be resting, recovering. They believed the humans would hide behind their wounded and delay. They were wrong again, because Titan wasn't a shield, it was bait. Inside a camouflaged command station buried beneath Titan's icy crust, General Marcus Lee stood with his arms crossed, watching the incoming alien wave on a massive screen. The alien ships looked like a storm of black wall with glowing green eyes, fast and merciless. But Marcus wasn't afraid. He looked to his side at a small team of engineers and whispered, "Lock the grid, activate all levels." With a single press of his hand, the trap began. Thousands of cloaked orbital mines floated above Titan, hidden like ice crystals in space. They powered up now, silently blinking as the enemy approached. Invisible drones swarmed from the dark side of the moon, designed not to fight, but to confuse, to scatter, to mislead. And deep within Titan's ice canyons, massive fusion traps were buried reactors waiting for targets to come close enough to detonate. The Zorath fleet entered the kill zone without knowing it. Their scanners showed nothing. They advanced, confident and hungry. Commander Natalie Cruz waited in the Iron Cloud, just outside Titan's orbit. She watched as the enemy fleet moved into position. Her voice was calm, steady. Hold fire. Let them come closer, in the shadows. The Phantom fleet drifted silently, cloaked and quiet. Their ships positioned around Titan like sharp teeth around a throat. Captain Logan Pierce was alive, rescued. After the Kravix mission, wounded but still fighting. He gripped the controls of his ship Valkyrie and said softly, "All ships, be patient, wait for the scream," and then it happened. One of the Zorath cruisers struck an invisible mine. The explosion lit the sky with orange light. Within seconds, 10 more mines triggered. Slicing through hulls, scattering flames across the dark, panic hit the enemy ranks. Alien captains shouted over, "There comes ambush. It's a trap. Pull back." But it was too late. The drones swarmed in, flashing bright lights, sending false signals. Scrambling targeting systems, the Zorath ships turned against each other. Confused and blind, Commander Cruz finally gave the order, "All units fire." Human warships erupted from hiding. Engines roared, plasma beams cut the dark, missiles screamed through space. The Phantom fleet hit from above, the Earth fleet from below, and drones danced between, creating chaos. Captain Burke led the front charge aboard the Vanguard, its cannons glowing red, for Titan. He shouted, "For everyone we lost." The Vanguard crashed into the middle of the enemy swarm, unleashing fire in every direction. Human fighters followed behind like shooting stars. Flying through the enemy ranks with unmatched speed, on Titan's surface, the fusion traps were armed. Zorath ships chased retreating fighters toward the surface, not knowing they were heading into the final stage of the trap. General Lee watched the screen flash red. "Now," he said. The traps detonated. Titan shook. Not from damage, but from power. Pillars of white energy burst through the ground, slicing into the sky, consuming entire enemy squadrons in fire and light. The sound couldn't be heard in space, but it could be felt. Ships vanished in seconds. Entire wings of the Zorath fleet were erased. From his bridge, Logan Pierce smiled. "Never corner a human on a rock," he muttered. "We'll turn it into a knife by the end of the battle." The stars above Titan were filled with debris, floating corpses of alien ships, and the silent glow of human victory. The remaining Zorath ships limped away, broken, scattered, lost. No one chased them. There was no need. The war had turned, fully and finally. Humanity had gone from the hunted to the hunters, on Titan's icy ridge. Commander Cruz stood outside her landed ship, wind biting at her face. Her visor opened as she looked at the distance. "Son, we were never running," she whispered. "We were waiting beside her." Ethan Burke walked up, bruised, covered in soot, but smiling. "They came for Titan," he said, "and Titan ate them alive." She nodded slowly. "What now?" Burke looked toward the wreckage in orbit. The pieces of alien pride burning quietly above. "Now we go home," he said, "and prepare for whatever comes next." And far in the distance, among the stars, every race that had once ignored Earth now watched in silence. Humans had stood their ground, again and again, and now the galaxy would never forget Titan. The war was over. The Zorath did not send another wave. Their signals had gone quiet. No more orders, no more commands. Just silence across the stars. Some said their leaders were dead. Others believed they had fled into the void, afraid to even say the word human again above Earth. The debris of battle still floated. Dalian metal, burned ships, broken satellites, but among them flew banners. Not of surrender, but of victory. The human fleet was scattered, damaged, and tired, but still standing in orbit. Captain Ethan Burke walked through the corridors of the Vanguard. His steps were slow, not from injury, but from the weight of memory. Every hallway reminded him of someone lost, every empty chair of someone who didn't come back. He reached the command deck and looked at Earth spinning below. Green, blue, alive. Commander Natalie Cruz entered quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to him without saying a word. They stood together for a long time, watching the sunrise over the Pacific. The light filled the window, soft and golden, touching their faces like a quiet blessing. "They're not coming back," Burke finally said, his voice low. "No," Cruz answered. "They won't, and if they do?" She sipped the coffee and smiled. "Then we remind them who we are, down on Earth." People gathered, not in fear, but in celebration. Bells rang in ruined cities. Candles were lit in underground shelters, and families cried as names of the fallen were read, each name a hero, each silence a salute, on Mars. General Marcus Lee stood in front of a wall carved with names freshly added since the war began. He placed his hand on the cold stone and closed his eyes. He had sent many into battle. He had seen them return in caskets, or not at all, but they had won, and now Mars was no longer a colonia, was a capital. A symbol that even far from home, humanity would rise atop Europa. Lieutenant Paige Monroe planted a flag on the wreckage of a Zorth command ship. It flapped slowly in the frozen wind, the Earth insignia shining in the ice glow. Her hand was bandaged, her eyes tired, but she stood tall behind her. The survivors of the Vigilance saluted in silence. "We held the line," she said softly. "Even at the edge, and beyond Neptune, deep in the shadows." The Phantom Fleet returned to where it had once vanished. Captain Logan Pierce stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, his ship dark and silent. They had done what they were meant to. They had come home, and now they would rest. He looked at the stars and spoke to no one in particular. "You forgot us once," he said. "Don't forget us again." Back on Earth, schools reopened, markets buzzed. Laughter returned to the parks. Children played with toys shaped like warships, and stories were told of how humanity had stood, how it had fought, and how it had endured. The galaxy changed too. Other species who once ignored Earth now sent envoys. Not demands. They asked for peace, for understanding. For friendship, they came with open hands instead of weapons, and humanity. They accepted peace but never forgot the cost. A new fleet was built. Not just for war, but for warning. Each ship named after someone who had fallen. Each weapon tested. Each pilot trained not just in strength but in heart. The skies above Earth were filled with new stations, new defenses, and above them all, a single message floated in orbit, written in every language. Alien and human. We are Earth. We stood. We will never fall. In the lunar hall of memory. A girl named Eliza Parker stood before her father's name. She was only 10, but she carried herself like someone older. Stronger, her mother knelt beside her, placing a small flower near the engraved wall. "Your father saved a fleet," she said softly. "He stayed behind so others could come home." Eliza looked up at the stars through the glass ceiling and whispered, "Then I'll make sure no one else has to." Above, satellites spun slowly, glowing with soft blue lights. Not weapons this time, but beacons of peace, of warning, of hope. The war was over. But Earth remembered, and the galaxy did too. Not because of how many ships humans had built, not because of how many battles they had won, but because when faced with death, when surrounded by enemies, they stood their ground and turned the war deadly. Not with fear, but with fire, unity, and the unbreakable will to survive.